pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is there anyone from the public who would like to address the committee on an item not on the agenda tonight? Thank you, public. Okay. Next on the consent agenda, are there any items on tonight's consent agenda that any member would like to pull out and discuss separately?
I do, Deb. I'd like to pull the Finance Subcommittee minutes, so it's BA, please.
All right. We'll take that up when we get to the Finance Committee report. Is there anything else anyone would like to pull from the consent agenda? All right. Could we have a motion to approve the remaining items on the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the remaining items on the consent
Dick?
agenda.
Second.
Second by Dick, okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Not unanimous. Thank you very much. My remarks are just a couple tonight. First, I want to make mention of the letter from the town of Rowley. You all have a copy of it, I believe. And I would like to read it because I think it's very well written and hopefully very helpful. This is written to Speaker DeLeo, and it's regarding the Chapter 70 state education and aid formula and regional transportation funding. Dear Speaker DeLeo, the Rowley Board of Selectmen urges you to support a revision of the Chapter 70 state aid education formula. Under the current formula, most Chapter 70 aid is distributed to cities. Regional school districts, such as Triton Regional School District, of which Rowley is a member, are receiving less Chapter 70 aid per student. The formula needs to be changed to provide a more fair proportion of Chapter 70 funds. The legislation must address this inequity. The board also urges you to support fully funded regional transportation as required under the law. Chapter 70 aid and regional transportation funding are key components to Rowley's budget and are relied upon to balance the town's budget. Thank you for your consideration. Robert Snow, Chairman of the Rowley Board of Selectmen. So I just wanted to publicly acknowledge that I think it's great, and I hope that we can get the other two towns to do the same thing. The next thing I would like to do is ask Ms. Jane to stand up just so we know. I know. Come on, up you go, Jane. Okay. It's been short but sweet. We would like to thank you very, very much for your service on the committee for the last 3 years.
Thank you.
And you're welcome. This is from all of us. All right, next. Yes, you can say something, of course.
I didn't prepare anything, but I just have to say I have been so honored, really, to be a part of this committee. You are a bunch of wonderfully dedicated, smart people, and this district is so blessed to have each and every one of you serving on this committee. And to our administrators, David McGee and Kimmy Croto and Brian Forget, and in particular, our superintendent, Christopher Farmer. Thank you so much. Outstanding. That's it.
Thank you, Jane. Next on our agenda is our student representatives report. Courtney?
Hi, everyone. I just want to thank you for being so flexible also for when Casey Ross had to fill in with me. I hope she did a great job, and I'm sure she did. Good, I'm glad. So last Friday, the 4th, was junior prom at the Black Swan in Georgetown, and everyone said it was one of the best run proms that they've had at Triton so far, and I'm sure everyone had a great time. And they also changed things up this year and had Grand March in the gym, and usually it's in the auditorium, so that was cool to see. Yesterday they had the juniors had the Credit for Life fair, and it went fabulously, and I know that kids are always surprised by how much it really takes to live on your own, so I think that's a wonderful program that we have. Today, and it was supposed to be tomorrow as well, but they finished the testing today, was the park field testing for Algebra 2 students, and it was in the computer lab, and it had a lot of help from the tech staff here at Triton, so I'm pretty sure it went great. Tomorrow, they have a coffee with the principal at 6 p.m. in the middle school lobby. Friday is the student council's dodgeball tournament at 6 p.m., and a lot of people are really excited to do that. April 14th in the morning is the Poetry Slam, sponsored by the poetry class and the Scribe magazine. April 15th is the 8th grade assembly, and they're just giving some advice and preparations for high school. The 16th, report cards will be issued during advisory. April 17th and the 30th, there will be a Middleton jail field trip for the psychology students, and they have to divide it up into 2 days because there's so many of them going, and it's a great field trip that they do. April 18th will be a half day, and there's a student council pep rally last period in the gym. April 21st through 25th, we have vacation, and May 5th, AP tests begin, and May 15th is the spring concert. So this is flying by.
Does anyone have any questions for Courtney? Suzanne?
I have a question, but I know that my students, I work at Masco, they went for the Credit for Life Fair,
Mhm.
and they really said how great of a job that Triton did. So
Yeah.
they learned a lot.
Yeah.
How much money you can survive on, basically. So kudos to the staff here. And
Right.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes, during the Middletown Jail field trip, will all of the students be returning?
Yeah, well, I think it's supposed to be kind of like a Scared Straight program. Obviously, not that intense, but it's just to see what they go through and the conditions at the jail. So everyone's safe, though. They can't wear earrings, or they take a lot of precautions when they go on that. So
Dina?
This is about the same subject, but it's
Okay.
for Mr. Farmer. Since it's a field trip, I don't recall seeing that come for approval.
Neither do I.
Thank you.
I wasn't aware of it until about 3 minutes ago.
Jane?
I don't know if you know this, Courtney, or not, the answer to this, but do you know why the students finished the park exam early? How that came to be?
I can answer that question. Apparently, they got through it very quickly. The advice that was given to the school by Park Pearson, who were organizing the tests, was not sufficiently clear, and they simply kept going rather than separating it out over 2 days. But my impression from what I've heard is that a number of the students found the math very difficult. Have you heard that? Yeah, that's exactly what we were expecting, because the bar has been raised very, very significantly. So they were getting it through very quickly. So instead of having another session tomorrow, they did it all today.
And so pretty much like MCAS, is it untimed? So basically, if the kids had been able to take it in 2 sections, maybe it would have been, I don't know if it would have been, it wouldn't have been less difficult, but maybe sort of more manageable? Or
Technically, it's untimed. Pearson does provide guidance as to how long should be the test should take, and the advice is to add 50% to it. But technically, students can go on until they've completed it.
a lot of the feedback I heard on that was it was difficult, and one of the students that I talked to said that she literally had no idea the answer to any math question on it. And obviously that's just one kid, but she's not stupid either. Like, she's a good student. So yeah, that was just the feedback I heard so far. So
What's happening, and I hope if the technology and I can work together, would like to show you something a little later on around where math is going. At the conference I was at a few days ago, we received a a presentation from Mind Research, which is a non-profit organization that includes neuroscientists from University of California in Davis, Berkeley, and Los Angeles. And they put up a question in front of the superintendents and asked them why the question was rigorous. And the answer, which I volunteered, and apparently was correct, was that the question gave the student no idea how to answer it. Very often with a math problem, there's a strong indication as to how you go about answering it. Rigor means that students have really got to think through and problem solve rather than applying an algorithm. And I assume that that probably was some of the challenge that students found today.
Paul?
I had a question. Mr. Farmer, about that Middleton trip, could we just get an update, the committee, in the next few days about the
I will be
specifics
asking
of it?
questions first thing in the morning. Yes, I'm sure it's an oversight, but it is a field visit, not a trip, a field visit. And I'll make sure that I don't think there's any opportunity to formally bring it to you before that date, but I will make sure that everything's in order.
All right, thank you. Any more questions on the student representative's report? That was the most questions we've ever had for you, Courtney, I think. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Reports and deliberations, fiscal year 15 operating budget. Mr. Farmer.
There are two or three things here. I do report a newspaper report that's indicated that the chairperson of the Raleigh Board of Selectmen has indicated that the town can meet the final budget assessment to the town without recourse to an override. The only matter arising I'm aware of is that the House budget was published today. I haven't seen a complete summary, but essentially the Chapter 70 funding remains as in the governor's budget. Municipal aid to the towns remains as in that joint agreement. They do appear to be recommending some slight increase in the circuit breaker and regional transportation. I think they were still debating it when that news came through, and no doubt there will be more. I will brief you as soon as I get a complete picture of that budget. I think that's all that I have to report.
School calendar. Everyone has a copy of the school calendar in your packet.
Bananas. Oh, is this driving you crazy?
Oh, no, I wasn't even looking at it.
No, no, no. Attention. All right.
I thought you wanted to talk about the calendar for next year.
Leave it over there. It's not even like it's all sync, you know. All right.
I don't know if people have had an opportunity or have looked over the calendar. Dina?
Thanks, Deb. The only question I have, and I checked because I know in the past we've had some conflicts falling on religious holidays. It's already in my calendar, so my calendar pops up any conflict, and there were none that I could see. My only question, though, is that we have a professional development scheduled on Monday, June 1st, and all the rest of our professional development days are on Friday. Now, I'm assuming that part of that has to do with organizing classes for the next year. However, that might cause some difficulty for parents, because if I recall, too, in June, we'll have that Monday, for professional development, and then there are the half-days for high school exams, which isn't a big deal, but it might cause confusion for parents if we have that Monday as a PD day.
You could move it to May 29th. That would mean there'd be two in that month.
Well, I was just asking if there was a specific reason why that's different.
I don't know. The Chief Academic Officer has put that part of it together, and I think she's trying to spread it out.
Right, but we've always had them on Fridays instead, and I'm just pointing out that, especially for parents of elementary school kids, if they're looking at a calendar and knowing that and it's almost the first Friday of every month almost, that they have a PD day or half day to account for, then all of a sudden we throw a Monday in.
It's just they have a year's notice, so.
Right, I get that, I'm just, just so that we're ready if
I
this
agree
is
with you, Dina.
approved.
It's a big gripe, I mean, at the elementary school level. It really is. And so the more consistent you can have it, it's not whether or not you can look at the calendars. People just get in kind of routine. And they're like, oh, all right, it's another half day. And they just plan ahead. You don't even look at the calendar. So, I mean, I think, Dina, you're just asking, like, why is it moving? And why can't we just move it to the 5th? Is that what you're
Exactly.
saying?
If there's a specific reason, then I'd like to hear it. But otherwise, I think we should consider trying to be consistent or be prepared for either kids absent or parents calling.
I would think that because it is the only one all school year that's like that we ought to give Kim a chance to perhaps say why it is that way. And if there's a reason for it, a valid reason for it, then people do have over a year's notice. But
If you're going to do that, I hope you would approve the calendar subject to verification of whether that PD day, half day is June 1 or May 29th, so at least we can get the rest of the calendar out to families and teachers.
The only other question I had about the calendar is normally we note when graduation is, and I didn't see it noted on here.
I believe the intention is June 6th.
That's what I figured. Thank you.
does anyone else have any questions? Paul?
Just have a comment. In January, when we do our budget meetings, the 15th needs to be colored as well. I know sometimes we miss the Thursday, but
Right, it should be blocked off. You think?
We were in the last 2 years.
Yeah, we haven't.
We've got through in 3 days, so we blocked out the 3. We can block out the Thursday as well.
It is listed on the bottom, but it's just not reflected in the calendar part.
So we'll block it out on the calendar. Okay.
Anything else on the calendar? All right, noting those 2 questions, one, the PD day on June 1st, and the tentative budget meeting on January 15th. Does anyone else have any other questions? Could we have a motion to approve the calendar based on what we've discussed?
I'll make a motion to approve the proposed school calendar for the 2014-2015 school year, which has been developed in consultation with the Triton Regional Teachers Association.
Could we have a second? Calendar. Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. Mr. Farmer, your report.
Thank you. Can I give notice that I do intend to raise a matter related to the New England Association of Schools and Colleges? I did email you earlier this evening, but you may not have had an opportunity to read that email. You have my non-routine schedule here. I do want to mention a couple of things. The Gene Geiger Center MVP program, that is the White Ribbon program, developing mentors against particularly domestic violence. It looks as if we're going to be able to start making the teachers in the high school and the middle school aware of that on May 2nd, and we will be looking for volunteers to become involved with that. And usually we'll be involving middle school teachers when it's been introduced in other districts. They haven't been, but since we're one building and relationships develop between high school students and middle school students, we thought it important to involve middle school as well. You heard something about the Credit for Life program earlier today. If you were checking Facebook, you will know there were some photographs posted yesterday morning while it was going on, and I hope you are checking out the latest news there. This year, Masco, you just heard from Suzanne Densmore were involved for the first time. The Institution for Savings is involving all the schools where they have a kind of branch bank. And as usual, it went very well indeed. I've referenced here the high school staff meeting this week only to express my frustration about the continuing problems of high school staff trying to look at that screen. Our latest estimates to improve the situation, which would involve 2 screens with projectors that point downwards, so they're not hanging from a ceiling. I understand that will cost about $14,000. As we get to the end of the financial year, I'm going to encourage you to see whether or not that is something that we can afford. What tends to happen is that most of the staff sit at that end and they simply cannot see. And I believe that if we're going to provide audio-visual presentations, they need to be quality presentations. People now are very accustomed to seeing really good stuff, and some of the, I'm going to call it amateurish presentations that we have, I think are just no longer acceptable. Yesterday evening there was a splendid interaction between 2 guest speakers and a number of high school and middle school staff around issues to do with internet safety, teen anxiety, and transitions. And the speakers have been positioned not on the stage, which of course is a big separation from the audience, but down in what I will call the pit. The trouble is there's no lighting in the pit, so that the people who were involved in the presentation, you could hardly work out who they were. So I think we've got a number of areas where we really need to smarten up our capacity to do much sharper presentations. Other things to mention, there's an exchange here between me and an assistant commissioner around the development of district-determined measures. Believe it or not, and I apologize for my cynicism, they have now published guidance for support staff, counsellors, special education teachers, nurses. That was published on March 31st. And they've now published guidance on district-determined measures for administrators on April 3rd. And you'll recall that we were supposed to be reporting pilot DDMs by the end of September. My intention is to hold onto our present course. We'll be talking with the leadership tomorrow about how we now move forward on with this new information, and talking with the teaching and learning leadership team next week. The District Administration Leadership Institute, this is where my blood pressure will go up, because I'm going to try and show you a little example of the work. What's very clear is that we are way behind a lot of districts across the country in terms of using blended learning. Blended learning is where the teacher teaches but has access to support material which is online. To give you an example, there's a company called MyOn, which provides access to reading material, fiction and a lot of non-fiction. The reading material is calibrated by what's called a Lexile. A Lexile is a level of reading difficulty which is established by psychometricians based upon the nature of the vocabulary and the complexity of the grammar and syntax. Those books can be available online 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, accessed via computer, any location, anywhere where there's Wi-Fi access. And this is creating opportunities for students who don't have books typically at home to gain access to literature. Kim Crotto will say to you that she has resolved what's called a summer literacy learning loss. If students don't read over the summer, they go backwards. Well, with the help of Carla Collins' grant, the Salisbury has a summer program to help students, and the data suggests that that's been successful. But that's relying upon an external grant, and we don't have that in the other schools. The example I would like to show you, if I can make it work, it may take a minute to boot up, is an example of a company which, again, a neuroscientists, led by an interesting Welshman who was a member of a rock band in his early days before he moved to the United States and became a teacher. Essentially, they're looking at ways in which students can learn math without needing language. Now, you'll know that the way that we present problems to students involves language. And what they're trying to do is to develop kind of learning tools that students can use, again, 24/7 from anywhere, without using language. So if this doesn't work quickly, we'll try again another time.
No, I didn't turn it off. I just turned the light off. See? It's there. It was blinking. Crazy.
Common Core formally introduces fractions in 3rd grade with an emphasis on 2 key ideas: relating fractions to the number line and using visual models. ST Math has over 2,000 fraction-focused puzzles spread across more than 80 games and 3 grade levels. Here, we'll focus on just a couple of games that demonstrate the ST Math approach. GG Cycle integrates visual models and the number line, and students estimate how far fractional pieces of a circle will roll.
So you now have a problem. Where should I put this?
What?
Well, 1/2. Circle is a complete circle.
Oh, so you have to roll to the circle? You have to make one revolution?
How will that circle go?
To 1. I don't know. 2. Ooh, I know 2. Pick me. But you do the front or the back of the balloon? That's just...
The thing's wider than one.
No, but there's no line in the bottom of the balloon. Half.
If I put that there, the balloon will disappear and the penguin will look puzzled.
Okay.
Penguins and balloons.
The radius of the circle always like a fraction of the, 1/4 the fraction of the number?
Notice in the next puzzle that we move GG's starting point away from 0. We can also include subtraction, here represented by the red fractional pieces.
I have no idea why this is not working. So you can see that the problems get more and more complicated, and there's no language involved. And so they look at the problem and they have to work out how to deal with it. So for kids who don't have a lot of language, that's enormously simulation, it becomes more and more complicated to work out where you have to put that basket to get the plane of the penguin to go up in the air.
The GG cycle can also be played in reverse. Choose how many unit fraction segments are needed in order to reach a certain target on the number line.
So it goes on.
We can present students with puzzles in the same context, but where the information needed to solve the problem is given symbolically. In Alien Bridge, students extend their knowledge of fractions and fraction number sense, building a wide range of concepts across multiple grade levels. Students are no longer estimating the value of fractions, but solve problems building circular and rectangular visual fraction models.
So it becomes more and more complex for the students. So that's something that, if this is expensive, it's about $19,000 for 2 grade levels for a school. It is expensive. It's a non-profit, and obviously the funds they receive they put into the research. It's not like Pearson or one of the big commercial companies. That's an illustration of what blended learning can do for students these days. My other takeaway, apart from the potential usefulness of this kind of technology, is the fact that there isn't a level playing field for kids. And I think we're going to finish up with the haves and have-nots in terms of access to technology. And it seems pretty clear to me that if PARC happens, that will be the point where parents will say, my child, these are our results, my child hasn't had the practice, isn't accustomed to the technology in the way that others are, and I think that's going to be very interesting. PARC, you heard earlier today from Courtney. Our staff did an absolutely exemplary job preparing for that. The high school administrators, the 4 teachers who were administering the pilot test, and our 3 technology people. The exchanges which have taken place among superintendents so far is it took so long to prepare the computers and the staff and the students for this, that doing this on a large scale is going to be very, very difficult. Interestingly, the Commissioner of Education went to Linfield, and the message there was that the students told the Commissioner they'd rather do it on paper and pencil rather than on computing, which is probably not what he wanted to hear. The gold kindergarten assessment that was mandated, and it's attached to the full-day kindergarten grant, so we don't have a choice. I have been making representations to the department about that, and we are reaching some agreement about reducing the workload for teachers. What's particularly annoying is that we're in the 2nd cohort, and we understand that for the 3rd cohort, funds are going to be made available for training. We have not received any funding available for training. It's an unfunded mandate, but the 3rd cohort is going to have help. The 3rd thing on assessment is that both teachers and administrators have been very concerned about our over-testing. You know, they say you don't fatten a pig by weighing it. And we feel that for good reason, a lot of new assessments have been introduced without our really thinking very clearly about what's the added benefit from the new assessment, and can we let something go without losing important data. Teaching and Learning Leadership team started 3 weeks ago. We've audited, mapped all the district-wide assessments, and teachers are now going to be asked to fill in the kind of more local school-based assessments so that we can then take a view as to whether we can do some weeding out and reduce the load. I'm not clear why we do midterms. My view is that we need to have far more summative assessment that provides guidance to teaching, than lots and lots of summative assessments that isn't usually very helpful. I think you'll have heard about Alicia Chason, who has been filmed by the DESE to provide an example of model teaching of the Common Core, which is a real feather in her hat, and there's a halo effect for the district. Warren, the therapy dog, will make his debut on the Monday after the upcoming spring break. Jennifer O'Rourke is spending that week being trained. I've put around in the original the list of unfunded mandates simply so it's in the record. I've now added the Common Core that was missed out. We were in California, and California adopts new standards. There is money available through legislation to help provide appropriate textbooks and so on. There's nothing like that here. I've included in the updated version a guidance that Deb Jones, our IT coordinator, has prepared for staff, because everybody's anxious to start using technology, but the question is, what do you buy in order to get the functionality you need? And sometimes we buy, much more sophisticated equipment than we actually need to do the job. And so the intention of this piece of work is to give guidance on that. I'm sure we'll all congratulate Dennis Buck, our network manager. He's been appointed to be the IT director for Pentucket. And the fact that we have a very, very stable network is really testimony to his very solid work on that. The website, they have all the text now. We're waiting for them simply to put the text together. And by the middle of this month, we're hoping to have that running. There's more routine reporting here, which then takes me on to the letter I received from Catherine Dorr, Tim Coyle, and Sarah Scruton today, which I put around the table. I've alerted you on a number of occasions now to a discussion that's going on about the appropriateness of the current NEASC accreditation arrangements. A number of districts have already suspended their preparations for any self-study. And you'll see that while they refer to it as a timeline shift, essentially what the high school is saying is that we need to postpone the self-study work until we're clear, where the new goalposts are and how high the bar is. This is interesting in terms of constitution, in that, a bit like the MIAA, the relationship between the high school and NEASC is a direct personal one. If NEASC writes to the high school, I get a copy, the chair of the committee gets a copy, but we don't get the original. And so the language I'm looking for is to hope that you would endorse the high school seeking a postponement of preparation work for the self-study until NEASC has completed its review of its accreditation arrangements, in order to avoid staff doing unproductive work. So I'm hoping that you would support that line of march. I'm using the word endorse rather than approve to recognize the constitutional arrangements.
Does anyone have any questions on the letter regarding NEASC?
Yeah, just so I understand, in really layman's terms, we're suspending our self-study until NEASC decides how it's going to judge a self-study?
Yeah, well, not just judge the self-study, but what the protocol is, what it is that they want done to prepare for the self-review. As I think I've mentioned, the general view of superintendents is that there's too much paperwork, there's too much preparing data that's available from other sources, particularly the DSE. And so the superintendents are not opposed to the accreditation process, but we want it to be leaner, sharper, more focused, and more related to the other things that schools have to do. Because, I mean, they have a school improvement plan related to the district development plan, and the language associated with those is rather different from the language of the NEASC accreditation. There's nothing wrong with the NEASC accreditation standards, but it tends to be cookie cutter, everything fits all. And I may have mentioned that the superintendent from Worcester was pointing out that in a big, complex urban district, schools have got different priorities to taking themselves forward, whereas the NEASC approach seems to be that you have to have all these ducks in a row. And the reality is that we have to prioritize what we do. So that's the background, again, to that.
Suzanne?
So I'm asked, we're doing this now, so are you trying to say that, like, all that stuff, like gathering the paperwork, gathering the evidence, I don't know if you guys know this, like, every half day of this year, I have to go, and I'm on a committee, and they assign every teacher to a committee, and you have to go find actual evidence of these different indicators. And some of it's hard, and some of it, I'm a teacher, I don't know. You know, it's more stuff like schools committee should know, or the administration should know, but the principal can't be involved in it. If I kind of, is that true?
The principal is typically not on
Right.
the steering committee.
Right, so it's hard for a teacher to go and say, well, what really is this indicator mean? Well, the principal has all this data. So it's kind of an odd way of approaching how to evaluate your school. And it is a lot of, like, paper chasing. I found a lot of just time I could be spent doing other things that are more worthwhile. So is that the process that you're trying to kind of clean up that I'm?
Yes.
Okay, so that's so that all that evidence gathering, putting it in a box, putting it online, writing your little summaries, like we have to go and get all the stuff and put it in a box.
I'm sure that the evidence collection will continue. The question is, how much evidence do you need in order to prove a case?
Right, and you're just trying to streamline that.
Yes.
Okay, I agree with that.
Paul?
Amen.
Ms. Farmer, I'm just wondering, can you give us a sense in terms of the number of districts that are questioning the NEAS process, or at least trying to streamline it? What's the percentage of people that are questioning versus those that say status quo is okay?
I haven't heard superintendents saying that status quo is okay. The last meeting I went to, there were about 50 superintendents there.
Out of how many across the state,
Around
would you say?
300.
Okay. So the position is sort of in the minority?
The position's in the minority, but the minority consists of thinking superintendents from districts that are going places.
But the 50 that were at the conference were all in agreement.
Yes, well, not entirely. This was a meeting, it wasn't a conference, it was a meeting arranged by NEASC. They've established a review committee, and it was their review committee meeting with superintendents in a kind of open forum. There are different views depending upon whether the superintendent has been principal of a high school. Superintendents who have been principal of a high school tend to regard the high school as the kind of flagship of the district, and therefore meriting more attention than other parts of the system. Those of us who haven't tend to look at a pre-K through 12 district and say, yes, the high school is very important, but it relies very heavily on everything else being right below if it's going to be successful, and taking much more of a system-wide approach. Superintendents who have been principals tend to have more affection for the current arrangement than those of us who haven't. I've been a principal, but not of a high school. So it's by no means unanimous, but the reality is that NEASC is responding to the prompts that it has received from the superintendents who have been saying we need to do this differently. And they wouldn't be doing that if they could appeal to a silent majority to say we'll just leave status quo.
Dina?
Mr. Farmer, just for clarification, because I don't think a lot of people in the public understand what this organization does, but would there be any negative impact? Let me rephrase that. What's the benefit of being accredited by NEASC And would this, if we were not accredited, would that have any negative impact on our graduates?
One of the advantages is having what you're doing being reviewed by your peers. There's merit in staff who go to visit other schools as part of a visiting group, seeing other schools at work, having conversations. The high school sends staff to visit other schools with a view to learning what they do. So that is all very beneficial. The last time that colleges came here to market themselves to our students, I went round and said, what difference would it make if the school was not accredited by NEASC? And now admittedly they weren't the top people from the colleges, but most of them hadn't even thought about it, and gave the impression that it's not something that they would necessarily check. I think people are much more interested in performance on assessments than the school accreditation.
Anyone else? Just again, to make it a little clearer for everybody, the high school, it is within their purview to directly correspond with NEASC, is that correct?
Correct.
They don't need to go through us or through the superintendent.
No, I
to
mean,
do
they'd be
that.
unwise to do this without knowing that we have their back.
Right.
And I'm sure that any correspondence that goes to NEASC will reference the fact, if you agree, that the school committee and the superintendents of schools support what they're doing.
Robin?
I'm just curious if you could identify some of the schools or the 50 superintendents who are not just rolling over for the NEASC.
I don't have my in one report a while ago I listed them: Wellesley, Newton North, Newton South, Lincoln Sudbury, Brookline. Would be Masco is the superintendent is part of it. Those come most immediately to mind. Framingham, Hudson, and those are all, very reputable high schools.
Thank you.
Based on what we've just heard, could we have a motion to endorse the content of the letter sent by the high school administration to NEASC? Thank you, Dick. Could we have a second? Suzanne? Is there any discussion? Paul?
I just throw out as kind of a question, would it be helpful for any of the other school committee members just to hear from Ms. Dara on this directly before we take this to a vote?
I would take exception to that a little bit. As superintendent of schools, I have the letter. I've met her this morning to discuss it. I'm transmitting the principal's request to you and supporting it. If there are some specific questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
Dina?
Personally, I'm comfortable with what's been presented. We have the letter in front of us that was signed by the principal and the co-chairs of the steering committee, so, and what the superintendent has explained to us satisfies my need to know.
Is there any other discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? None. Thank you very much. Unanimous. Yes, questions on the superintendent's report? Robin?
Mr. Farmer, I just have a couple questions going back over your report. Have we received any response from your April 1st letter to the Assistant Commissioner yet?
Yes, I did get a quick email apologizing for the rather patronizing tone of part of it, and explaining that if I actually knew her, I would know that she wouldn't really be intending that. So we're fine. The way
Okay, that's good, that's good. And then regarding the blended learning and the presentation that you put up, the one thing I was thinking about when you were talking about not a need to use language was that it seems like everything coming from the Common Core now is about literacy across all disciplines, and that you can't get away with just doing the math problem because you're going to have to write about it and explain what your thinking was. So you said it was blended, so I'm assuming it's just one component of the learning, but it's not going to replace the need to be literate.
How we? Oh no, no, it wouldn't at all. The company does produce whole courses, but as I understand it, a lot of districts are using it as a supplementary, so that where students are in difficulty need some practical examples. They can look
Just
at
a different
this
approach.
material. Yeah, people learn in different ways.
Jane?
Right, and sort of speaking to what you just said, Robin, and Mr. Farmer, at the early stages, looking at all that concreteness, it's talking about learning styles and learning differently for the little guys and gals. Sometimes language actually interrupts their conceptual processes. So, you know, this kind of meets the needs, I would say.
I think the key is that it's in addition to the other requirements to be able to articulate.
As
how you got there.
we've returned to this, I've discovered that for $9,000 a school, we could introduce world languages into the elementary schools using online learning. That they have programs that don't require a linguist to support them. That they provide professional development for regular teachers to be able to maybe have a couple of classes a week on a world language. I shall come back to you on that sometime.
Suzanne?
I guess I just need a clarification after what Robin said. So is this program to help students be on the equal playing field for like park testing computer access? Would they access at home? Or is it just to have more of this in the classroom? Because I'm assuming that a good elementary school teacher would already be doing this. Like they'd already have their visuals. Like you draw on the board, you draw on the whiteboard, like here's a fraction, you know, here's a pi. You know, I'm assuming that those good teachers already do the visual part of it without the language.
They do, but as the report says, the beauty of this is it's self-paced. You get immediate feedback. Does the penguin go up in the balloon? You've got it right. If the penguin's sitting there looking at you, you haven't got it right, so you've got to keep trying.
So is this something that we'd have our 24 rolling laptops roll into the classroom, you know, park the kid down in front of a computer, have them learn at their own pace, have them do little different like modules like SRAs like we used to do when we were little? Is that the goal of this?
It's one way of working it, and clearly students who get it very quickly will go through it very quickly onto more complex work, and others will remain to you know, hopefully be tenacious with their difficulties.
So this is kind of dual-fold, getting them used to a computer in the classroom for preparation, park testing, and then kind of differentiated learning, and then kind of like.
But the park tests aren't going to look like this. This is designed specifically as a learning tool.
Wouldn't they already be doing this? That's what I'm saying. Like, aren't the elementary school teachers already? I just have trouble always like going towards a program to teach something that teachers, I'm assuming, are already doing. I mean, what teacher doesn't show a visual when they're doing fractions?
But this is just
Well, I mean, I'm just
different part of a toolbox, but it's very user-friendly.
I guess we'll talk more later. I have more questions. I guess I don't want to hold up the committee meeting, but I just have more questions about it. I thought it was, originally, my understanding, I think, was wrong. I thought it was like having students be on an equal playing field for when, you know, computer testing comes along the line, everyone's going to have that kind of understanding of using a computer, using a mouse, being able to manipulate that and get them on an equal playing field. And then I just misunderstood the whole, it's just a program to give teachers to help them teach.
I wouldn't put it like that. Our primary interest in technology at the moment is to improve and extend instruction. The park test is down the way.
But don't they have like free programs like already? I mean, like they must. I know in chemistry we have like the PhET. I mean, we use these like simulations all the time, and they're free. And it's like you don't have to pay $19,000 to use them. I just, and I'm sure elementary school has this somewhere.
The
Look at
difference
Jane, like Jane's like.
The difference with this is not like finding something on the YouTube which is free and useful, or something out of MIT where they have a whole range of free programming. This has been developed as a course, if a district chooses to use it as a course, or as a supplementary material for children maybe who are finding it difficult to grasp some of the concepts. I mean, a lot of kids have real difficulty with fractions.
Yeah, I know, I get that, but,
You probably teach some of them.
yeah, I teach them every day. But, I don't, right, I'll just stop.
Well,
Well, I guess my question would be, is this program exceptional compared to the free online ones? And are the teachers asking?
I don't know. I'm moving into this area of blended learning, and as I learn more about it, I'm aware of its potential, particularly for personalizing learning. Any time of the day, any place that's got Wi-Fi access, and it's self-paced. And in this case, it's very visual.
It was my understanding that Mr. Farmer showed us that as an example of what blended learning is and can be. This is,
I'm not selling you a
No,
program.
this is
No,
not-
I didn't think that you're saying, but I guess the district was headed towards that way, and I just personally misunderstood what the president.
I think you were reporting on what you saw at the conference, the meeting that you went to.
Right. No, that's
An
what I
example of blended learning. Flip a coin.
Go ahead, Jane.
But I do agree, Suzanne, there's not a math manipulative out there that I'm sure all of our teachers don't have. Even if every single classroom teacher, I mean, doesn't own it themselves, they certainly share. I would almost venture to say, where this district has been so terrific in all of their math initiatives. In that regard, you're right. There is nothing concrete that I can imagine any classroom from pre-K up to 6th doesn't have. This, though, could be even a little bit more supplementary in a different regard.
Dina?
I have another comment on the superintendent's report, if I may.
Sure.
In the school council minutes, Salisbury noted that they had over 90% participation again in parent-teacher conferences. I wanted to acknowledge that and congratulate them. Also in their report, the principal provided 2 links. I did print out the Wilson Implementation Network. It's called Combining Evidence-Based Wilson Programs with Evidence-Based Implementation Practices, School Profile, Salisbury Elementary. Although we have had presentations on this, it's really worth reading. It's a short report, but it's really worth reading because it helped me to understand exactly the timeline, how long it took to get this in place, and what success they're having there. And I wanted to congratulate them on that as well.
Thank you for bringing that up, Dina. Any more questions on the superintendent's report? All right, thank you very much. Moving along to subcommittee reports. Policy Subcommittee has not had a meeting since our last meeting? Okay, thank you, Linda. Finance Subcommittee, Robin?
Well, I want to take this time to respond to Dina's questions about the minutes, so I'm going to hand that over to you first.
The only question that I had, it was stated in the minutes that you had discussed the stadium project and that we were going to have that on the agenda, and I was just going to ask when we were going to, because, I mean...
So I was going to bring it up in a minute.
Oh, okay, never mind.
No, we actually did ask that our meeting was just recently, and we had missed the meeting before, and we did discuss it, but we didn't get it to this agenda on time, so I was going to mention it like right now after I just went over a little bit to say that we really feel it's time for the full committee to address the stadium project, and I'll just say it right now instead of later, but that, you know, we've made a significant fundraising effort, and now we have a as Mr. Farmer says, a moral obligation to at least take care of dangerous stands and deal with the track. And so are we going to consider taking on the whole project or a portion of the project? And I think the committee needs to discuss that. So I'd just ask that that be on the agenda for May.
I think we can do that, because I know there have been some discussions, had some discussions with Brian around different means of funding and things, so yeah, we can discuss that.
We just want to make sure that that's coming before the committee, certainly before the school year ends.
So could we have a motion to approve the minutes of the Finance Subcommittee meeting held on March 18th, 2014?
We just note those minutes, we don't have to approve those.
Okay.
Because we
Then
have
they're on
not
the
approved
consent
them
agenda.
yet.
That's right.
So I'll make a motion to note the minutes of the Finance Subcommittee meeting held on March 18th, 2014.
I second.
Any questions or further discussion on those minutes?
I just have one. On the minutes, we were $40,000 in deficit based on the revenues under expenses. And I was looking down at the non-salaried employees, and I looked at Pine Grove. We have $76,457.
I'm not following you, but give me a letter or a number or something. I'm just,
On the Regional School District Revenue Expenditure Summary page for the month of January 2014.
oh, you're going actually back to the treasurer's report itself.
Oh, okay.
What page are you on, Dick?
It's Annex 3, I guess it would be page 5. Because Annex 3, you have 4. You have it's listed as page 4, and then you go to the, after that, you go to the Regional School District Revenue Expenditure Summary for the month of January 2014.
Okay, I'm going to have to dig in. I'm just going to
Can I-
question the
can I-
order of this because we've already approved that report, and it was handled in the meeting.
She's correct. If that report is
But
already...
earlier in the meeting, we already passed that on a consent agenda. Maybe we should, I can certainly chat with you about it. But just because of the new method of the consent agenda, then we're reopening an old issue.
See, that's-
But let's
that's-
just meet for a second after the meeting.
Right, that, you may or may not have seen, I sent out an email a couple of days ago asking people...
I did see that, but I didn't read that and read this.
Okay.
until-
All right. But that was the purpose for that, so we could get those cleaned up before we voted on them. Thank you.
Right, let me catch back up here.
Audit report.
Audit report, which I'm actually going to hand over to Mr. Farmer just to review it. There is a management letter in addition to the large audit that summarizes. I'm going to let Mr. Farmer go through that at this time, but I just want to, in general, say that as the auditors have said and Brian has said to us in the meeting, this is a very clean report. And while there are little recommendations of things we could be doing and doing better, there were no substantial findings that the committee should be aware of, but I'll let him go over those, but it was just...
In the management letter, one of the most important sentences is the 1, 2, 3, 4th paragraph, in which they say, we do not consider the following matters to be significant deficiencies or material weaknesses. However, they are matters we want to communicate to you. And that typically is what auditors do when they haven't found anything else, and there are some things that need some attention. There are two things. One is about some cash reconciliation, and a response has been made to that in terms of a monthly reconciliation. They also noticed that we had some outstanding checks in hand, and the Treasurer is going through those to make sure that those are all cleaned up. Really, the only other part of the letter is where they explain the new terminology of the GASB arrangements. So there is really nothing in here to worry the committee. Looking at the main report, I think some of the more interesting things are the the graphs. If you look at page 41, you'll see there's a graph there that confirms what we've been saying. State aid to education is flat. Assessments to member towns up a bit. I'm on page 41 now. And it's interesting to see how flat year on year the graphs are. If you go to page 42, it confirms that we've been increasing funding on instruction and significantly reducing expenditure on school choice and charter and fringe benefits. That reflects the work that the committee did on health insurance in particular. If you go to page 43, you get the same picture. Expenditure on instruction up, school choice down, fringe benefits down. And the last thing I draw your attention to is again, at the end, they repeat essentially the management letter on page 47. We did not identify any deficiencies in internal control. I'm on the 1, 2, 3, 4th paragraph on page 47. Didn't identify any deficiencies in internal control that we consider to be material weaknesses. They also reassure us that they found no instances of non-compliance with what is regarded as the standard way of doing business. So this is a very clean report, and it's a testament to the good work of Brian and his colleagues. They run a very tight ship.
Are there any questions for Mr. Farmer regarding the audit? Paul?
Ms. Farmer, I have a memory when we were talking about the treasurer's contract. I thought we had said as a committee that we would have her at this meeting when the audits came out, so if any questions came up. I may be wrong in my memory, but I thought that was discussed.
I don't recall that. We may have.
As I recall, Paul, I thought that we were going to try and have her in either the September or October meeting to kind of give us an overview, because a lot of since the books really close the end of June, then she would give us a review of the previous year and let us know what's coming up moving forward. I could check my notes, but that's what I recall. I don't know if you remember anything different, Deb.
There was discussion, you're correct, and I think that we decided it made more sense to come and have her talk about what the condition of the fiscal year was after it had closed out.
And the only other question I had was about the OPEB funds. Are we going to take steps to separate those?
I asked that question today. Brian is not in the office today, but the answer is we must, if that's what they're advising. At the moment, they remain commingled.
Paul, certainly, if you have any specific questions that you would like the treasurer to answer, let me know. That would be great.
Well,
We'd certainly do that.
okay.
Okay.
As you approach this, it's important to remember that the treasurer's responsibility is verifying revenue. Her report is essentially about revenue, and then she looks at the expenditures. But it's Laurie Ziwiak and others who deal with the expenditure. So she would be able to primarily talk about the revenue side of it.
Any other things regarding the audit?
Can I just ask a question, though, Deb?
Yeah.
Paul, since you have questions, are any of those questions that you feel the entire committee should hear? I mean,
Well, yeah, I mean, I just have two questions. I mean, I've been on the committee now a few years, and I've read these auditors' reports in the past, and it's just that there were two issues about the checks that Mr. Farmer referenced, and, just the actual bookkeeping in terms of how this has happened. And I don't recall reading this in auditors' reports in the past. It just kind of struck me as odd, and I said, So,
We talked about this in our meeting. Jane, I don't know if you want to chime in, but I asked about that. And Jane, you asked the question, I think, is it because we have a treasurer, especially that very first one about the timeliness of reconciling checks and having things mesh up against the bank account versus how we're filing it. And it really didn't seem to be an issue about her being here just one day a week. It was just, it's not unusual to have things not reconciled, it's how quickly you then go back in and reconcile them, because we did talk about that, like, is this a big issue? And it really does not seem to be a big issue. The other one about the outstanding checks, Brian actually claimed to be guilty, is that when we send a check to an individual or a vendor, if they don't cash it, it's outstanding. And they found one for Brian's, I think, cell phone or something. Yeah. And so a lot of that, especially in that second point, were people that weren't cashing our checks versus us not cashing checks that were coming to us or something like that. So we felt pretty satisfied during that meeting. Amy was not in that particular meeting, and if or you know, to ask her, but we felt fairly satisfied that it, especially with those outgoing checks, we can't control people that don't cash their checks, and sometimes that just takes time to clear all that up. But the reconciling of the records and all, it seemed, Brian said they have talked to her about that, and it's a matter of reconciling it in a timely way, because it is not uncommon to have minor errors here and there, but
So, Robert, now that you've taken the ball and run with it, I do just have one other question. That is about these checks and whether they put the verbiage about them being void 1 year post. I mean, that seems like something that should have been in place for years and years. I mean, so that you're just to cut down on this problem.
yeah, so
So-
Brian will tell you, as he told us, is you should have seen the way things were conducted 10 and 5 years ago. I mean, it's a major cleanup process, so things, when the auditor comes in, like, I guess I got the feeling that we hire them to nitpick, and we want to nitpick. But the important thing, like Christopher said, is this is not about deficiency in internal controls. It's where can you just sharpen your pencil a little more and clean things up. So we felt fairly satisfied. But, you know, I truly invite any member of this committee to attend the Finance Subcommittee meetings and ask additional questions there too. So I'm sorry Brian isn't here tonight, and if anybody does have additional questions, I think he'd be happy to answer them.
You may be amused to know that my executive assistant in Gloucester sent me an email the other day to say that they'd found a check that I had not cashed from Gloucester in the sum of some $62, and they've just found that and want to know whether I'd like to claim it. So I think we're probably slightly more up to date than that.
Okay, thank you, Robin. Anybody else have any questions about their audit report? Okay. Could we have a motion to receive and file the audit report for the year ended June 30th, 2013, as recommended by the Finance Subcommittee at its meeting on March 18th, 2014?
So moved.
We have a second, please?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? This isn't about that. This, because none of us were at that meeting. I wasn't at that meeting either. You still want to abstain? Okay.
So in continuing, the other thing that we discussed in the Finance Subcommittee meeting was the school committee stipend. And the issue arose, what is the purpose of the stipend? To recognize the cost of expenses involved in being a school committee member, to recognize the work done by a school committee member. We had talked in a meeting a few months ago, I think Dick brought up, if we're going to raise the stipend to be on par with other communities, or what we think is reasonable, since the stipend hasn't been changed since the district was regionalized many, many years ago. Dick brought up the idea that, well, if it's going to be based on what our costs are throughout the year, then how do we possibly track that? So in our last meeting, we asked Mr. Farmer to just give us a working paper on what might be involved if we as a committee decided, let's track it for the year versus let's just kind of evaluate what is reasonable and fair. So Mr. Farmer has prepared a paper for us.
I have. You've got it here. It's in bullets to make it straightforward. I think it's important to know that different communities handle stipends in different ways. I don't know of any. That doesn't mean to say there aren't any where stipends are regarded simply as a cover for expenses. That they typically are intended to recognize the responsibility and the time devoted to fulfilling those responsibilities. Having said that, there's no doubt that committee members do involve they're out of pocket for quite a lot of things associated with their work. I think another thread through this report is that where people are being reimbursed, that exercise involves a lot of time on the person who's seeking reimbursement, and also in the office as well, because it all has to be checked. So if you're looking at telephone calls, mileage, meals, materials that you may purchase, that involves receipts. In some cases, as this notes, some of the things we will purchase for you through our purchasing arrangements, because we try to keep reimbursement to a minimum. Because obviously if you've got a purchase order and an invoice, auditors can track that expenditure much more carefully than if we've just got a credit card receipt. So I think a fundamental question for you is what do you think the stipend is for? Is it about covering your costs? Or is it larger than that? I often use the word honorarium for a sum of money that recognizes effort made without it being particularly related to a number of hours, a particular pay for a number of hours. I don't think you will be out of line at all in sticking to a straightforward stipend arrangement that reflects responsibility, time and effort. And I originally used the word antisocial hours here. I think on Brian's advice I said non-family hours. You could be at home with your family this evening. You probably ate earlier than you might have otherwise have done. People call you in the evening when you may be watching your favorite program, and you're responding all the time in those kinds of ways. I don't think it's for me to provide you with a solution. What I've tried to do is to say these seem to be the issues at hand. That there are some essential questions at the end which were intended to provide some guidance to the conversation. Does the committee think it right that the importance of its work should be recognised through some form of compensation? Does the committee wish to view their compensation as simply offsetting costs associated with the role? If the goal is to offset costs associated with the role, should specific costs be reimbursed through a receipt claim approach? And is the committee willing to track all expenditures in detail for a period to better assess actual average expenditure? Does the committee wish to view their compensation as a combination of an honorarium for the contribution made and a notional reimbursement for expenses associated with the role? If the answer to D is affirmative, does the committee wish to set the stipend by linking it to an index related to other local government stipends for comparable responsibilities? That takes away from you you're in a sense directly setting your compensation, because you're kind of indexing it to decisions made by other people, and arguably there's some merit in that.
Well, I'm personally not interested, at least at this time, in some kind of tracking system, because I'm concerned about the work and the burden it puts on central office staff. And again, I don't think selectmen or other people are going through submitting expenses to be reimbursed for. There's really no compensation for your hours. That's not it. It's just, is our stipend reasonable for what we do and the costs we incur in this job? So, and that's how this whole thing came up, because it had sat at the same level for 20 years, went backwards during budget cuts, and we reinstated it. And as the report says, people are pretty hesitant to vote on their own salary. But in fairness to those that come behind us and to ourselves, it's just, is it reasonable?
Any other? My thoughts are that this is a much more equitable way to treat committee members, because we always pick on Dina for binders. But some people may need 10 binders, and some people may choose one binder. So just, I think this is a much more equitable, and I like the last thing that you said, Mr. Farmer, regarding tying our stipend to the local stipends. So I don't know if that's something that should be discussed in a policy subcommittee meeting, if that would be a policy, appropriate of a policy regarding that, or?
I don't think you necessarily need invariably refer things to another committee, a subcommittee, if there's a matter in front of you to dispose of at the time.
Does anyone have any questions, comments, any suggestions?
I guess I'm confused, Deb, as to, I mean, we've already set it for this budget.
Yes.
So is this moving forward? Are we looking to change it, or?
This was just, I think that this discussion was brought up because I think Dick asked for this to be looked at. I think that's why it came up in the first place. I had not heard anything prior to this other than it is difficult for us to set our own stipends. That is difficult. So I just think this is an interesting point to throw out there, that should our stipends be tied to some other thing? If not, we can certainly, we don't have to do anything. We can just leave it the way it is right now, and this is something we could think about down the road. We don't have to do anything right now.
Well, after reading this and participating in other discussions that we've had regarding the stipends, I agree with Robin. I think it would be difficult for us to try and keep track of our expenses, and like Robin pointed out, more so it would be a bigger burden on central office. So I don't think that that's a good idea. Like you, Deb, I do agree with Mr. Farmer's thought that we should be looking at our stipend in relation to what other boards in our area, specifically the selectmen, do for their stipends, because looking at what school committee members get across the state for stipends, some get none, some get thousands upon thousands upon
month.
thousands, yes, of dollars. I would suggest that we move forward like that, looking at what the selectmen get and moving our stipend as we see fit.
This was the first time that I remember ever actually looking at what the other boards in this district got and kind of getting guidance from that. Suzanne?
I think something came to my attention is that it might be helpful to look at the other stipends in the district for services, coaches,
That's
color guard, because, or instructors, things like that, and see what type of time frame that they provide to students. It might only be a couple months, and they make more, a lot more. And so in the context of like the service that they're providing the school, usually teaching instruction, how much are they getting in compared to what we're getting? And I mean, that's kind of like a service to the school. I don't know if that's kind of comparing apples and oranges, but it helps put it in context.
interesting thought.
Yeah, and I think that it would be helpful moving forward to have this data to take a look at what other school committees do. I think you're right, expenses are just too hard. It's too hard to keep track of, and just move forward with a number, and then, if people don't like it, then write us, so that's how I feel.
Mr. Farmer?
Excuse me. I counsel you to think very hard before looking at teacher compensation.
It's not teacher.
Well, coaches, that they're part of the teacher contract. All those stipends are part of the teacher contract. And given that you negotiate the teacher contract people could argue that somehow there's some kind of self-interest in doing that. I would counsel you against that.
But
Simply-
self-interest anyways, we're raising our own salaries.
No, it would be a self-interest when we were negotiating the teacher's contract. If we said, he's correct. He's absolutely correct. I mean, the three of us on PNN are sitting here going, oh, yeah, that's right. Because if we were to suggest that all of the stipends in the district be increased by 10%, we could be accused of wanting to increase our own stipend by 10%. So he's correct.
We are like just making our own money. I mean, we are doing that anyways. That's what I'm saying. We are saying, okay, let's increase our salary by $500.
If I
What's
may,
the difference?
There's a difference between your, as a committee, agreeing to increase your compensation and agreeing to link it with a bargaining unit with whom you bargain.
It helps to put it in context.
But-
I mean, it really does. I mean, I don't care what you say, but if you look at whoever it is, I don't want to point out any position because that's unfair, and they're getting paid, $2,300 for a 2-month season doing X, and we're here a year.
I think the difference is that it is comparing apples and oranges because it's comparing teacher compensation to school committee stipends, which are elected officials versus employees of the district. We
think it's
can't
more of a
take a penny, as far as being paid in another capacity other than a school committee.
I guess. I don't see the difference. I mean, I don't see the difference of saying, let's raise our stipend to $5,000 and, whatever. I just don't see the difference.
Dick?
The reason why I brought up the point of trying to track expenses is not to have it be laborious or time-consuming for anybody, but to actually create a format by which, if we want to increase the stipend, then we can all have a pretty good idea of how much it should be increased, not to create more paperwork or whatever. I know that Joe Perry in the audience is a selectman. I've been a selectman. I never submitted a form for mileage or cell phone usage or anything to the town of Raleigh. I'm just saying, if we're going to increase the stipend, unlike Congress and the Senate, which they just go along and they vote whatever they want to vote for themselves, then we should have an idea of how much that increase should be. Nothing more, just as a benchmark, as a sounding board. So,
Maybe we're going a little bit above and beyond here, but anyway, I appreciate what you're saying, Suzanne, but having sat on several negotiations, I really understand what Mr. Farmer's talking about, too.
Right, but I wouldn't want to link, like, okay, if you guys go up 10%, we go up 10%. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it just helps me put in context of like, oh, yeah, that's right. It's just.
I understand.
I'm not trying to link anything.
No, I understand. And again, I understand what you're trying to say, but I think for our purposes, we need to align what we do more with boards in the municipality, in the towns, within the district. But I appreciate the suggestion. I think it did make me think about it. Anything else? Okay.
So you're leaving this on the table for the...
Yes. Yes, but thank you for your work on that. Personnel and Negotiation Subcommittee, Dina.
We are continuing our negotiations with the teachers, and our next meeting is tomorrow.
Thank you. And we will not be having an executive session tonight, by the way. Next, we have some policy second readings under action items. First one is new school committee member orientation, Annex 10 in your packet. Could we have a motion to approve the revised policy on new school committee member orientation as a second reading as presented?
I'll make the recommendation to approve the revised policy on new school committee member orientation as a second reading as presented.
Could somebody second that motion, please? Suzanne, thank you. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's unanimous, thank you. Therapy dogs in schools. Could we have a motion to approve the proposed policy on therapy dogs in schools as a second reading as presented?
Make that motion.
Okay, Dick, could we have a second, please? Suzanne, thank you. Any discussion? Jane?
I'm just delighted to hear that Warren is coming on board after April break, because somebody told me that it might take almost a year to get this paperwork and everything instituted. So it's just wonderful that Warren's going to be with children before the end of the school year.
Any other discussion on Warren? No. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? None? Thank you, unanimous. Could we have a motion to approve the revised policy on gifts and donations as a second reading as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve the proposed policy on gifts and donations as a second reading as presented.
Could we have a second to that motion? Okay, thank you. Any discussion on that? All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Next item on our agenda, we have some donations. We need to approve the receipt of the following donations. First one is $5,000 from the Eaton Charitable Foundation of the Newburyport 5-cent Savings Bank to be used to offset user fees. The second one is a $10,000 anonymous donation to be used to offset high school performance center upgrade in the weight room and softball program. The third one is from multiple vendors and volunteers donating their time and materials for varsity baseball and varsity softball fields. The next one is a $39,028 from the Institution for Savings for the purchase of Chromebook mobile lab devices and staff professional development training for all Pine Grove school teachers. Does anybody have any, can we take those all together? Is that okay?
I'll make a motion to approve the receipt of the following donations: $5,000 from the Eaton Charitable Foundation of Newburyport 5-cent Savings Bank to be used to offset user fees, $10,000 anonymous donation to be used to offset high school performance center upgrade, which is the weight room and softball program, and multiple vendors and volunteers donating dugouts for the varsity baseball and varsity softball fields, and $39,028 from the Institution for Savings for the purpose of Chromebook mobile labs and devices and staff professional development training for all Pine Grove school teachers.
Could we have a second to that motion?
Second.
Is there any discussion on any of those donations?
I just thank them all.
Yes, we thank them all. All those in favor of approving the receipt of those? Thank you.
Could I give you a little more detail on
Certainly.
one of them? The dugouts. There are going to be about 60 members of the Bricklayers and Allied Craftsmen Union, Local 3, coming to the district to donate their time to lay the foundations for those dugouts.
That's very, very wonderful. We thank them. All right, thank you very much. Next, we have 2 field visits to approve. These are out-of-state field visits. The first one, they are both in your packet, Annex 8 and 9. Salisbury Elementary School, 3rd grade. There will be 2 classrooms going to the Historical Museum of Old York, Maine on June 5th, 2014. Also, Salisbury Elementary School, 3rd grade, 2 classrooms to the Historical Museum of Old York, Maine on June 6th, 2014. Could we have a motion to approve those field visits?
Make a motion to approve 2 classrooms, grade 3 at SES to Historical Museum of Old York in Maine on June 5, and 2 classrooms, grade 3, SES to Historical Museum of Old York, Maine, the following day, June 6th.
Okay, thank you very much. Any discussion or questions about the Dick?
Yes. On one of them, the admission is $8, the other one is $9.
More money on Tuesday? I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know why that is the case.
Fine with me.
Okay. But it would be fun, would be interesting to find out. Any further discussion on the field visits? All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous? Thank you very much. As I said, we will not have an executive session tonight. So the next, yes,
I just
Suzanne?
have a question. When do we vote the last day of school?
You voted the last day of school when you
Already?
established the calendar. We simply add on the number of snow days.
No, this year.
When you agreed the calendar back in last spring.
Oh, so we don't ever, I remember we used to say, oh, the last day of school is.
In the past, we have said, okay, it's not going to snow anymore, so the last day of school will officially be whatever it is.
You're probably in the wrong job if you know it's not going to
Well,
snow.
I didn't, no, it was, no, but that's what Suzanne means.
Right.
There is
Say
no
more.
there is no necessity for you to vote that formally. You agree the end of school and the 5th snow day that you are statutorily bound to.
Okay, that's fine.
And then after that, we just add them on.
Okay. Good enough.
The teachers all know when the last day of school is. And so do I. Could we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Do we have a
I'll
second to that?
second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you very much. We'll see you on May 14th.
When is the last day of school?
There were 40 communities.
Isn't it?
If you look at non-Salian.
Yeah, the 18th or 19th or something like that.
Not bad. That isn't bad.
That's